righty.
Welcome to Colton Overcoming. This is our second or third attempt.
22.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today on Colton Overcomers. Pretty excited today. I have a couple guests with me, one being my beautiful sister Hannah, and then also our really good friend Troy. We all obviously grew up together. So kind of wanted to just have discussion on kind of some of the things we grew up in, and then also kind of talk a little bit about the last episode I put out, which was a little bit controversial, which I know it kind of would be, but overall I think it was a good thing. There was a lot of light shed on some things. So yeah, we just kind of thought we would discuss some of those things. So thank y'all so much for doing this. Appreciate it. I know that whenever we get together, we talk about all kinds of stuff, laugh, cry, and kind of just go from there. So I thought we would actually record it this time.
Which makes it a little awkward, but I think we can do it.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, what did y'all think about, I guess just kind of dive into it. This last video that I put up was interviewing the cult leader's daughter of Restoration City, who has been out of there for about 10 years now, but she kind of divulged a lot of information. A lot of things came out and were confirmed. Troy, do you kind of want to give your take on what?
Yeah, I think
just overall.
I think overall that was a really incredible interview. You stepped into some place that we haven't been before. You've talked to staff members and volunteers and people that have gone through the program, but this is the first time that you've actually gotten a chance to talk to the inner circle family member and the oldest family member in the family. So it was pretty enlightening. Like you said, there was a lot of confirmation, things that we had heard rumors, but had heard rumors from multiple different angles were confirmed. And then there were some things that really radically changed. The story about how we split from the Assemblies of God Teen Challenge to being Family Life Training Center, StraightWay, Restoration City, is drastically different from what Melody is describing and the information that she
because discovered. It was a flat out lie.
Yeah, it's quite different. So looking at it now and looking back at it, I got there in '89 as a 6-7 year old, and you guys got there what time?
91.
So right in that transition, because it happened somewhere between '89 and '91 is that transition. So the change from David Kirschke being the hero that wanted to set up a family teen challenge that took in whole families, and that the Assemblies of God didn't back him, and that it was him following the calling on his life to do that for families, and the Assemblies of God saying, well, we can't take the liability, but you're blessed to do it. That's the story that we were told, or some version of that. But what Melody talked about was quite drastically different, that in the years leading up to the split from the Assemblies of God, she kind of had been a problem child for them, and that they were actually going to confront him. And that when it came down to it, he used the excuse of it being a family, the only one of its kind, which is the reason my family was there to begin with. We came all the way from Michigan because it was the only teen challenge. My dad had gone to a teen challenge up in Michigan and heard about it through there. So with all that backing, that place was packed. But the point coming down to David Kuhl's side, and they were about to confront him, and he preempted that and separated. That's a completely different story. So
yeah, very interesting take and everything, and a lot of things confirmed, like I said. What did you think, Hannah?
Same. I was kind of floored when Melody talked about being 5 years old and at his dad's friend's house or somebody's house or their house, and having to play the piano at midnight at his dad's beck and call, or her dad's beck and call. And then if she cried or didn't want to, she's 5 years old, tired, probably 11 o'clock midnight, she'd get spanked if she didn't, which I thought, yeah, I totally believe that, because that's how he was, and that's how our dad would have been. But at the same time, how could a parent do that? That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we were just completely lied to. because that's a totally different story than what we heard.
Right.
And yeah, there's a few things that I was a little shocked to think about. So a lot of stuff I think we knew.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Some stuff
I-
definitely not.
I think some stuff we knew like 90% of like, I'm pretty sure I'm accurate.
Yeah.
That's 90%. But then I was like, okay, I knew that happened. So it definitely confirmed a lot in that we're all not wacky and crazy.
Mhm.
I mean, I know that the place is wacky and crazy, but
We might be a little crazy.
well, yeah, leaving something like that is gonna be, we're gonna be a little
Yeah.
effed up there, but yeah, so.
Was there something like specific that stuck out to you that you were like, oh my God, did not know? Maybe just the assemblies of God.
I mean, I would say that, but I mean, there was just a couple little things about maybe her personal life that I just wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have to go back in full detail or anything, but like little things, I was like, oh wow, that, it definitely makes a lot of sense as to why you are the way you are,
Yeah.
or have become. She's in the middle of change, which is awesome. We can all make amends and change and try to be better. But yeah, I mean, there were little things here and there. And I also had I had been speaking with her 4 months prior to this conversation. So we had several conversations over the phone that I would hear this stuff and I'm just like, oh, wow. Definitely does not justify any actions like I've said previously, but it makes a lot of sense into the behavior that was going on. And so anyways.
Now, but I have even heard people say like, her pain is, I'm good with that for a bit, because that's exactly what we felt for years and years and years. When she left, she lost her best friends. And all she knew, same, because we had to abandon our family and friends. We had to cut them off the minute we got there.
Yes.
Same for us.
Yeah.
Right.
We all experienced
kind of that desire for her to be tasting her own medicine.
Yeah.
There's
And then you hear the stories of her being a kid and you're like, oh my God.
Yes.
That is awful. Like, don't taste your own medicine.
Right.
Back away.
Right.
Oh God.
And give grace,
It is being able to do that and actually see the human that was made that way. Like you talked about her 5-year-old being woken up at midnight so that she can be showboated about to David. That creates an identity in a child that the only thing that she's good for is her performance.
Her only value is that. And that's what a kid would feel like after that.
Right. And you see that kind of in the way that she presented herself way back then, was that it was the trophy, the spotlight, everything had to be on her, the limelight. And so you get that, and you feel all the horrible feelings about, man, this person treated me this way. This person, oh, it's time they get their own medicine. Then you hear her story and you're like, oh, our stories are not so far apart.
That's why I always nowadays I think about somebody that's awful to another person, or even thinking about our past and how awful people were to us. What did they go through?
Right.
And even with David, how did he grow up?
Right.
Was it an amazing family environment? Was it authoritarian, disciplinarian sort of environment? What was it? Or it's like nature versus nurture, which I'm sure we don't want to get into right now, but you think about people that hurt others, especially like kids growing up. What did they go through as children and their environments to make them like that?
Right. Hurting people hurt people.
Right.
Exactly.
It's being able to take a step back for a minute and go, okay, I know that I was hurt by this person, but this person was created that way or was formed that way by someone else hurting them. And being able to take a step back. And like the question that you just asked, I don't have the answer for what David's upbringing was. None of us do, but it's a good question to ask, because what that does,
I'm curious. I'm truly curious.
Humanizing them enough. And I know that for all the people that have been abused spiritually, physically, emotionally, sexually at that place, humanizing our oppressors, humanizing those that abused us is like a no, you don't do that, right? But it gives us an opportunity to go, is there room to recognize that the person who hurt me was so twisted by others that hurt them? And asking the question, if you can see it in Melody, that, man, she was this way, horrible person. I mean, loved publicly humiliating people. And I've got stories for that.
Oh yeah, same.
But then now seeing that somebody did that to her, okay, well, if she has some human element, does David element? Not that I'm asking for pity for him at all, because that's
Certainly
not the
not.
question.
No, but that it's
But the question is there. Was
curious.
he damaged too?
Yeah.
Right? Who damaged him? Right? And
That's what ever since that episode aired, ever since that, that has been in my mind. How did he grow up? What was his environment?
So yeah, Troy, I mean, definitely what you were saying, that hurt people do hurt people. And the way you grow up is kind of how you may or may not treat others when, you know. And I think, thank God that some of us, we actually turned out decent, I think. And some people that have left there that grew up with us, and our some of our friends didn't turn out so well, are either going through rehab currently, or have
Right.
gone to prison, or it's just like, you know, by the grace of God, go by me. It's I guess that just kind of leads into a little bit of, we just kind of wanted to talk about how we kind of grew up, but especially being in the rehab part, having parents that were going through a rehab part, and we were kids in this
That's
environment
crazy. And in general,
for
just
2 years. And
that thought is crazy. Like, who does that? What if there's pedophiles there?
we'll get into that in a minute, because
Ugh.
I've done a lot of thinking about this, and my view on this is so different now. Even when I left, I still had the mentality like, oh, it's good, as in it takes in whole families, and whole families can
Right.
be helped.
Mhm.
My view on that is so different now.
Yes,
Mhm.
mine
But-
too. Mine has changed too.
But I mean, real quick, so just like the 4 types of people that you have going there are obviously the parents that are going through the rehab part, the kids of those parents, and then they end up staying and getting on staff and everything. You have the kids that are born and raised into this, and then you have just staff members or volunteers that move on campus and want to give their time and energy into this, and then
Mhm.
few years later, they find out it's not as what it seems
Right.
on the outside. So obviously we were those that were growing up in this and everything. And I was trying to think about some past memories I had, just specifically those like 2 years our parents were in the program part of it. You know, we were so young, going at 7 and 8 till about 9 or 10-ish. Maybe. And I know, Troy, I mean, how old were you whenever your parents were going through the rehab part?
Let's see, 89. I was born in 83, so 6.
So you
I
were
already
pretty,
turned 6.
yeah,
but
you
yeah.
were, I mean, 6, 7, 8. So you're pretty young and stuff. Hannah, I mean, do you have any, I know I have a couple memories there. Do you have any like specific memories of actually being when we were kids there and everything, and like our parents were not allowed to communicate and stuff? And
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I was sick a lot. We got the chicken pox,
we did, yeah.
the chicken pox. But I always felt like there were so many times, because I felt like I was closer with dad. There were so many times I just felt like I wanted to go up and give him a hug, or just be normal.
Yeah.
And you couldn't do that because you're separated from your dad or whoever is actually going through the rehab part.
Right.
And I can't remember, is it 3 months or 6 months that they're separated? Do y'all know?
I think it,
I thought it
okay,
was 6.
about 6. I think it may depend on the couple, or if the timing that God allows them to
Is
reunite.
right. Yeah.
But so when they are separated, you have to have a monitor to speak to each other at any time. So what just irks me is that, like, when you have little kids that are sick, we had the chicken pox, and I have just a weird memory of like, we couldn't talk to dad or something, and dad waiting in
He might
that
have been
hallway.
on restrictions, because
Oh,
sometimes you were put
yeah.
on talking restrictions
Yeah.
if you got so many demerits or whatever, however it went.
Yeah. But why we weren't taken to the doctor though? I don't remember going to the
For the
doctor.
chickenpox?
Yeah.
There was no.
But there wasn't anything they would have been able to do anyway.
Yeah.
Just buy the
had-
cream and
Just like-
endure.
Either way though, what I'm saying, like, so many of the kids were not taken to the
Oh,
doctor.
absolutely.
It was like I felt like we were sick for like 2 weeks during that
Absolutely.
period. And
And even like when
nothing
your
is done.
appendix was bursting.
Holy shit.
Even that, I was like, what?
okay.
It took forever for you to be able to go to the doctor.
Okay.
What the hell was that?
I was just talking to mom about this the other day to get the exact facts on it, because I could have freaking died. I literally could have died. I have a scar on my stomach.
Yeah.
It is embarrassing. Like, So mom said they thought I had the flu. Obviously, I was nonstop throwing up. And it wasn't until, I mean, this is going on days and days, if not a week or something, throwing up constantly. I couldn't keep anything down. I still have this vivid memory because of how painful everything was.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until there happened to be a nurse there. She didn't work there as a nurse.
Right.
She just happened to be a part of the
Be a
church and
nurse.
be a nurse.
Yeah.
She came, we were living upstairs at the time, and they had just like reunited, mom and dad. And she comes and checks on my stomach. She's feeling on my stomach, and she goes, yeah, she needs to go to the doctor right away. So they take me to the doctor, like it wasn't the ER or anything. And I remember he told me her appendix burst. She needs to go into surgery right away or she will die.
Dr.
Like
Sears?
Yes.
Dr.
Yes.
Sears.
Oh my God, yes.
Who all went to Dr. Sears? Raise all panic or something, Dr. Sears.
He's the one that.
The only
We saw him for
pediatrician
everything.
probably there because we
The
were
bald
small
and
town
the
USA.
thick ass mustache.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Dr.
So-
Sears.
It's like the diabetes guy. Diabetes.
So, but the thing was, why was I not taken to the doctor up to
Right.
this point? I was spewing. You know, like throwing up and you just like, it kind of just comes out.
Yeah.
This was projecting, like spewing out like that.
There's a lot of instances this happened with a lot of different kids where they were not properly taken care of in time.
Yeah.
Like even when I had a hernia,
That's
I was
right.
screaming
Yeah.
I was screaming sitting one time. It hurt so bad. It took days for them to get me to the doctor, and I had to have surgery to get it removed. It was so bad.
Wow.
But they just like, I don't know if it's
I think
what
half
is
of it, I
that?
think half of it is trying to pray it away, pray to Jesus away that God will heal us.
Mhm.
or
And
and half
the
of it's
other
like they're
half is this-
they're diagnosing. They think they know what's
Yeah,
going on.
she'll be fine.
She'll be fine.
She just
Yeah.
has the flu, or she just has, even if you do have the flu, you should go get some medications, go get some,
Right.
ugh.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
I-
DK's over there popping pills like ain't nobody's business. But okay, we'll just sit
The-
here in silence and suffer.
The little children will just be sick over here. So
I had pneumonia down at the bottom apartments
Oh yeah.
for weeks, and I just lost time. I
That's
remember
something
just
you
waking up
have
and
to
then
go to
having
doctor
some
for.
crackers and then going back to bed, and then that for weeks. And that was when my parents were separated. Crazy.
I do,
Crazy.
I mean, I do have a couple questions because especially with you, because your story was just crazy when I first heard everything. And during that time, especially during the time of like some of the assaults that were
Mhm.
going on, were when your parents were going through the program and they were separated, right? Or they were just getting back together.
The sexual assault and the abuse that happened after the sexual assault that we covered. My mom had moved out of the downstairs up into the upstairs. So we were in the upstairs apartment. From my mom's story, they hadn't gotten back together again. It was about to happen,
Okay.
which is why they moved them up into the apartments up there. 'Cause the
Okay.
downstairs were single moms,
Right.
and the upstairs apartments
With a family.
families. So my mom is pretty sure that they hadn't gotten back together. They were getting through their I think they could eat meals together without
A monitor.
Mm, that's
is where
big
they were
stuff.
at, right?
That's big stuff.
But I could be wrong. So like
Mhm.
you gotta remember 6-7 years old when this happened. So after I told my mom everything, confessed to her all the things that were going on, all the little stuff that I was doing, that I felt guilty for, along with this huge thing. I think she tried to get a hold of an elder to tell my dad. And then, many stories that we've told on this before is that there's this separation. They take me from my mom, from the apartment, and take me to the school wing
Mhm.
where they had all that.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
where I got disciplined. It was in the children's church.
Mm.
Now that once my mom said that, I was like, oh, that explains why the window was at my head level. And I
Ugh.
remember facing the
You
street.
remember certain things.
Right.
but
There was
yeah.
more details that came up, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's where
Yeah.
the Sunday school was. And it was in the first room on the left. Yeah.
Mm.
So that's where I got spanked that's the thing. I remember counting, I remember falling, and not remembering anything after that. So I don't know how I got back to my bed.
Who
Who
can we
spanked
say a
you?
name, or do we have?
Oh,
to
my dad's the one that spanked me,
But he was instructed
Lloyd
by the
Despain
elders.
was the one instructing him, keep going. He hasn't broken yet.
Was he there in the room?
Yeah. Yeah, he was there. In the room.
What
Jeez.
the
Right. So
hell?
he's telling my dad to keep going and keep going, which is the same thing that he did with my brothers too.
Yeah.
And it was a belt for me, which means deep tissue damage, probably not there, but
Well,
enough
still.
pain.
It's still,
Yeah.
yeah,
Lots
exactly.
of welts. It was a 1x4 with my brother until it broke.
God.
So
That's what the Kershey sent to that big old wooden
Ugh.
right.
thing.
So recognizing this is a pattern. The same person, Lloyd Despain, is there instructing fathers to beat their children till they give, like faint or things break. And it's just like, that's so twisted,
Yeah,
right?
that's torture.
Yeah.
So twisted. And think about how young, I mean, you said you were like 5 or 6, right?
Well, we got there when I was
Around-
6, and it was
so-
within the first year.
So 6 or
between
7,
6 or
either way,
7.
you are still a small child
Yeah.
that is dealing with a belt that is probably bigger than you going over you.
Mhm.
Like, oh my God. And your mom. So when you're with your dad disciplining you, and your mom didn't really find out about that, right?
Till she saw the wells.
Till she saw it on and
Yeah.
so because they really couldn't communicate as much.
Right.
Oh God. that
Yeah,
is
and they
so
weren't
sick.
allowed to talk at that point, which bears witness that they probably weren't together
Right.
at that point, was that all she saw was the welts.
Mhm.
And I went to a lady that was, how would you describe it?
One of the leader's wives, not
Yeah,
quite an
one-
elder.
yeah, okay.
One of the
So
leader's wives.
one of the leader's wives. They were an elder's family, and I don't know the response from that, but it was silence.
Mm.
It was like she had no recourse,
Yeah.
and she wasn't allowed to talk to my dad.
Yeah.
And even if there was monitor at that point, I'm guessing they had monitors again, so they
Mm.
wouldn't talk about what happened. And then it just faded into memory. Kids recover fast. I mean, we might not recover much as our souls that fast, but
Mhm.
you know, body's back. I'm out to play.
Yeah.
Jeez, man. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. No kid should have to go through that. God.
That's insane.
You know, like I said previously, I do not think at all there should be whole families going through a rehab. The individual should be focused on the individual that is having the issue. I do think I'm all for people getting help and all that kind of stuff. There is serious addictions out there. That's not to take away from any of that, but it needs to focus on that person and not have little kids where they're surrounded by all these adults and men, single men that were coming from prison and being paroled, coming straight from prison and
So
being
crazy.
paroled there. Who knows what kind of sexual assaults they had on their record.
Right.
No wonder Miss Judy Lovely
Yeah.
Haynes
Yep.
would get on to us.
Thank God for
Ugh.
Judy, because
Yeah.
although we didn't like it at the time as teenagers, she made sure we were not roaming the campus grounds with all these single men paroled from prison.
Mhm.
She made sure that we were not, especially at night, but like walking their specific sidewalk,
their-
going their
yep.
way and all that. I used to get mad because I thought, well, I already have so many rules and regulations. I can't do anything.
Yeah. Why can't
But she protected us
Yeah.
so much. Thank God for Judy.
Yes, I think
Mhm.
I could not agree more. There's that time where you're going, yeah, she was a godsend to protect a lot of us kids.
Yeah,
but
she was.
there were rules that we just didn't understand. Like
Mhm.
when I was a kid, the front sidewalk that went in front of 115, the
Mhm.
office and everything else like that was free for everybody to walk.
See, that's the one we could not walk on.
Right. Judy Haynes changed the rules that no children and no girls can walk in front of the men's
She's the
dorm.
only one with sense there.
Yeah.
My God.
Right, because that was the men's dorm.
Yeah.
The majority of it was the
Makes
men's dorm.
sense.
I remember riding my bike there. I remember hanging out with kids my age, toddlers, moms being out there because that cement slab in the
Oh,
middle of
yeah.
the thing, that
Yeah.
was where everybody, I mean, we used to hang
Gather,
out.
gathered and
together.
congregated
All
with the
the
tables and the
time. Yeah.
yeah.
And then it was, you're not allowed to go there. If you need to go, you got to go back next to the print shop and come all the way in to get back. And she made those rules.
I know.
right?
Yeah. And at the time we did not like her.
No.
But now
Oh my
looking
gosh,
back,
but-
it's
oh,
just
thank
like,
the good Lord for her.
thank God. you know.
Thank God for Judy.
I mean, our schooling we weren't allowed to go to public school at all, obviously back then. And so I don't even think back then we were really,
I don't think we even did school. Like
There-
when we went,
they-
I mean, it might have been here and it wasn't like,
they did have this little school with one of the teachers where where the moms were coming in and homeschooling us. That was only for a little bit, I
I don't
believe.
think, yeah, but
They
that
had-
was,
But
They had pre-K and kindergarten with this lady, Miss Helen, I think her name was.
Edna? Was it
Edna, there we go.
oh, Miss
Edna.
Edna, yeah.
That's,
Miss Edna.
that's what I was
Right.
referring to.
Okay, so they did
But-
have that for when we were little kids, and then
Right.
it was life books, and you were homeschooling. So-
Freaking life books.
Life packs.
Life
Life
packs.
That's one thing I still struggle with to this day. Like, I'm so upset about the fact that we didn't have we didn't have a proper education. And then we were forbidden to go to college. I really had to work my ass off to even be able to take the test to get into college because I felt like we were so far behind.
yeah.
And I felt like such a moron coming in, trying to get into college when I knew for certain, especially as I got older, I knew I was not getting the education I needed
Mhm.
and I was not where other kids were.
Right.
And I hated that. I also still hate the fact that I missed out on sports. Like now watching my own son be able to participate in Little League and play
Mhm.
baseball
Mm.
is one of the greatest joys of my life because he's so happy and has so much fun. And that's what I want and love for him. And I hate because I'm sporty. I like playing sports. I love it. I play with my son all the time, basketball, baseball, but why didn't we get the chance to do that? I wanted competitive sports. Like I feel so,
I think they did it for the
Ugh.
boys, but not really. It wasn't really.
there was no way for
Yeah.
us to do that unless you were in public school. Just what the hell were our parents thinking?
We were being
They weren't.
labor trafficked.
Yeah,
weren't.
have original thought, have a mind of your own. Don't
But
be a,
it's you got to think about what they're being fed day in day out.
yeah, I
is
get that, but they're a
Your
parent.
thinking is what got you. in
Yeah,
the
but as a
situation.
parent, you have a distinct feeling
Yeah.
inside
Yeah.
when somebody treats your kid a certain way. I don't give a shit who they are or what they do. If they treat my kid a certain way in a bad way,
Mhm.
I'm out.
Right.
Why couldn't our parents have original thought and say, this is not okay? I have that feeling. It's like, oh God, please don't hurt him.
Well, I think I would not be surprised if a lot of our parents did have that feeling, but
They were too scared to speak up.
right. So like,
yeah.
my dad, as soon as he got out of the program, we're leaving, and my mom was like, no, we're staying.
That was the case for a lot of families. The dad would want to leave, the mom would want to stay.
Dad wanted to stay, mom wanted to go back, I think.
I don't understand
Yeah.
that and what that dynamic was
But
for
you
so many families.
Going back to the question about the previous episode, seeing that was the breaking point for Melody as well. Treatment of her daughter
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
was what woke her up. There was something wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and it
That makes
makes
is
so sense.
that does make sense.
Yeah.
Like that's how it
Mhm.
should be.
Yes.
Not that you should wait all that time, but
Right. Something's
like
gonna
if
wake
there's
you up.
there's gotta be a line somewhere.
Yes.
And I would say, yeah, my kids, you look at him wrong, I'll beat your fucking ass.
Yeah.
No,
I
I'm just
didn't-
kidding.
I
I'm
didn't
kidding.
know, but in a couple conversations with my parents, that's the reason they moved off campus.
It was because of the treatment of you.
Yeah, treatment
of
our
all the
all the
kids,
kids,
yeah.
specifically
Well,
my brothers,
yeah.
you know, and probably my sister at one point.
Mhm.
But that's why, is that they just knew it was unhealthy, and I don't know
Mm.
why didn't our parents pull the trigger earlier? I mean, I think everybody's going to have their own story there, but you're right. It's
But there's
is, and-
I'm so sorry though.
No, I mean, there's definitely different aspects and things to that. And I think a lot of it has to do with you're coming in having trauma and doing drugs and alcohol, and all of a sudden you're better.
right.
So you feel like you owe this place something. That doesn't, yes, our parents should have stuck up for us,
Right.
100%. Of course, they should have said something time and time again. But when you maybe feel like, I don't know, I haven't been an addict, but when you maybe feel like I have no other options, so maybe I need to stay here
Mhm.
and I'll just shut my mouth and carry on. I've heard this from a lot of people that it's
Yes.
better just to shut my mouth and just carry on and just do whatever the
I
leadership
know
says.
somebody that went through the program 3 or 4 times, and their view was the place was great. They went through the program 3 or 4
Okay, you'll have to
times.
tell us who that was.
Yeah, I need some more information on that.
Okay.
Let's
No-
have a
no
off-record
names,
conversation.
no names, but someone that struggled with alcoholism. And every time this person would relapse into alcoholism, she would go through the program. And once that was, you would know who I'm talking about if I told you.
It's my dad. Just
No.
kidding. It could be dad.
It could
Let's
be.
just be real. How many times did he go through the damn program? Did it
Papa
actually
Bear.
work? We don't know.
Papa Bear
He still
was.
struggles,
I-
so I don't think the damn thing worked.
From the first time she went through the program to the last time that she went through the program, I think was a 15-year span.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Is that, and in that process, she would only be there for the program. She would get sober, she would get it back into her right mind, and then she'd be good for 3 or 4 or maybe 5 years. As of right now, she's been sober for 20, almost 30 years at this point, which is
Amazing.
great for her.
Amazing.
So, but conversations with her was like, I don't see all the bad that you're talking about. So I've tried to show her some of these videos and things, but it was
Wow.
from her perspective, I don't need to see that. Because for her,
Some people
it was
are-
the place that helped her get
Right.
Yeah.
And that
sober.
is our dad
Mhm.
still, it's like, they want to, and mom was like this for a while, for a long time. They don't want to hear it. They want to just shut that door. They want to put a wall up. They just don't want to address it. They don't want to think about it.
Mhm.
They're not there anymore. And so they're somewhere else.
Right.
So to them, they just don't want to delve into it.
Right.
And that's when it's a family member or someone close to you, that's really hard. Because especially if you're opening up about it and are trying to heal, you need that.
Mhm.
Right.
You need that. At least some sort of validation. And it's not healthy for the other person to do that either. That's just unhealthy, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, like I said, there's so many different dynamics to everything and stories and sides. You could go off on
Yeah.
so many trails.
Right.
I will say something that was, I feel like something that they really probably thought they were doing really well with us and this is really helping us and everything ended up doing way more damage
Way
than we could ever know. And that was light meetings we would have,
Mm-hmm.
counseling sessions being in 115.
Mhm.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Why am I laughing? I'm laughing. I'm
It's like, I want to
From
I can't even
the-
hear the word 115.
it is
Oh,
it makes me nervous hearing 115.
I hate it. It's like you get your butthole immediately. It's like you
Yes.
clench up and
Pucker.
your heart drops into your stomach.
Yes.
Oh my
I'm gonna
God.
be
You
taking
just
a
hear the
shit
word.
if I have to go
Oh
over
my
there.
God.
Well,
It was
You knew what was going to
awful.
happen if you got called there.
Uh-huh.
So
If
real
it-
quick,
if-
okay,
yeah.
sorry, real quick, Troy, explain what 115 is.
Okay, so 115 was, okay, if you need a map, that's another thing, but it's just a couple doors down from the main office. And it was the
Room.
space or room that they would bring, it had a bunch of couches in it, a desk that kind of looked, I think it was an old like classic desk in one side of it. And so what they would do is they would bring someone in that was in some way, shape or form not conforming, and they would just overwhelm them with a bunch of people that are just berating them.
So they've done something wrong
Yes,
in the leadership size.
Yep.
And the leadership has to address it
Yep.
and scream in their face about it and
Mhm.
berate them and humiliate them until they themselves are broken. And I don't mean broken like,
No,
oh,
it's
confession. Oh, I did wrong.
psychologically breaking.
You are breaking a person's soul and spirit
Yeah.
and watching their identity right before you disintegrate. Until they do that, you're in there for hours and hours having to listen to them.
And I've heard people say they were either in there like all day, if not all
Mhm.
through the night. And it would be anything that would be kind of light. I mean, anything was so dumb that you were pulled. You shouldn't have been pulled in there in the first place. But it would be anything from kind of light as you need to stop flirting with a boy to all the way someone being sexually assaulted and being spanked by every freaking elder without the parents' permission or their.
or their
Oh,
knowledge.
yeah.
And so it could be something as small, but then go so extensive to where you are bringing children, teenagers in there and whipping their ass. Like, what the hell? I know that back in the 90s and 80s, it was a different time where you could spank kids and stuff, but they just took it to a
No.
whole nother level of like, we're going to beat the shit
That's
out of
abuse.
you.
It's
That is
abuse.
abuse.
It's just abuse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. Do you want to kind of go into the like light meeting or what the format was for the 115 stuff?
Yeah. So I mean, just yeah. So there was the 115 room, but then overall, it just like you had other rooms as well that were counseling sessions, or you had different
You had
other
others.
counseling sessions,
Yes.
and then you had light meetings. This all kind of goes together as in confess your sins one to another, and ye shall be free. That was constantly said, and then they were trying to make people confess things sometimes that were not like there was never an issue or never a problem.
Right.
That was always so weird to me.
Right.
But yeah, Hannah, if you kind of want to explain like maybe what light meetings are, and then being in the hot seat.
Light meetings was an acronym for living in group harmony through truth. And it was basically your peers or leadership sitting you down, and themselves. Everybody just basically confesses their sins and humiliates themselves and others.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, you confess your deepest, darkest sins or thoughts or whatever, and you get berated and told why that's so wrong and why that's such a sin, and in front of everyone, which is so weird. Also, we did it in church.
Yeah.
We would have, when we have communion is when we'd have confession time, and people would have to get up and,
Yeah.
do you remember?
Yes.
And confess everything. We were
I-
just talking about this.
I don't necessarily think they had reaction response to confession like they did in light meetings.
No.
But yes, it
But
was
the same
public
idea
humiliation. Yeah.
was humiliating a person.
Yes.
They confess these sins, they're humiliated and berated.
Yeah.
Whether or not anyone's actively saying anything to them or berating them, that's the feeling
Yes.
you get.
Yes.
And I like, as far as 115, I refer to it as my 115 experience, because I feel like 115 stood for so much more than just a room.
Yes.
It was an experience, a horrible experience people went through. And I feel like, I mean, I was pulled in once or twice in that specific room, but I had so many more 115 experiences outside of that room where it was the same concept, same idea. And you got the same, like, oh my God, I'm in trouble feeling, where you just are in panic mode until it starts. And then you're in fear mode the entire time. And it's like,
Until you break.
Until you break.
Yes.
And I remember oh my God. I remember getting pulled in for being worldly because we looked at OK Magazine or Star Magazine, something like that.
We were actually on the road when that happened. We would have so many light meetings when we traveled on the road, like on the StraightWay team, which we've talked about the StraightWay team a lot, but so I won't go into far detail about that. But we would get pulled in for the stupidest things. We were reading a magazine,
like looking at outfits, or like, just makeup trends or whatever.
What's so funny is that the whole point of like StraightWay was to make a good life look attractive. All of your outfits were chosen for that specific reason.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that they would go, but you're not that.
It's worldly.
Becky
You're
do
being
that.
worldly. It's just too worldly. I'm like,
well,
and I didn't understand.
Okay, this is
Still
such a
don't.
stupid story and something I'm coming to terms with, you guys. Okay.
Yeah.
But it really affected me, and maybe because I was a teenager and this happened, but this bitch shaved my arms. Okay.
Cheers. All right.
Cheers.
I don't know. What bitch are we talking about? There were many there.
This is the dumbest story. It's something that like, whatever. It's not even that big of a deal, right? We're on the road.
It is to a teenager who's already like self-conscious. you know?
It's the wrong time to like.
I can't even believe I'm telling this story because it is embarrassing. Just as a girl, it's embarrassing because you have a lot of hair. Well, some girls just have a lot of hair. I had a lot of hair on my arms. Why am I laughing?
We're having a light meeting right now, and we're confessing.
You're in the hot seat.
I had a lot of hair on my arms.
I forgot to explain.
I had to.
We'll get there.
I had to be 15 or 16. I know that I was a impressionable teenager that like you're trying to look good, you're trying to put on makeup, but also like they would tell you, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to lose weight. This bitch comes in the room. She like opens, we were staying in a hotel room. I was in the hotel.
We were on the road with
Yes.
StraightWay.
And I was in the hotel. She opens the door and she tumbles me down, gets on top of me. I'm literally like laid back on my back. people are pinning me down and there are people behind her. Everybody's laughing.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
so
Everybody's
fucking
laughing.
cruel.
The boy that I happen to have maybe like a little crush on, I didn't really like, it was just like this crush, whatever. He's in the background.
Oh my God, he was there.
I think so, from what my memory serves me right. And you know how memories kind of,
Yeah.
but I do specifically remember this because I had evidence of it on my arm.
Was it early or later in the time that you were on StraightWay?
It was like in the middle.
She was like
Yeah.
15, 16. That's
Yeah.
a very impressionable.
So she has me pinned down. There's like two other people holding my arms down. I did have hairy arms, but bitch, you could have came to me on the side and be like, hey,
Let's wax them or do something.
you want to let's have a girls
Hazing.
fun day. Let's
She
just
just
go have a
hazed
girls
you.
fun day and we
Hazing,
can
that's-
you know, do girl stuff and let's shave and let's like, you know, showing me in a different way than this. She shaves my arms
in front of everyone.
in front of everybody. I'm like literally about to laughing, but like laughing to stop from crying.
Crying,
Tears
yeah.
are
Oh
like
my
welling up in my
God, that's
eyes.
humiliating.
They have me down and
Okay.
she goes,
Wait.
"Oh,
Go talk about that for just a second. The laughing because you're about to cry. How many of us have had that
Yeah.
experience?
yeah,
Absolutely.
Like the only thing that you could do is laugh because you're being
to keep
bullied,
yourself from
or
crying.
you're being touched in a way that's uncomfortable for
Yeah.
you, and so you're laughing just so you're not crying,
Yeah.
because
Oh.
that's even more embarrassing.
Yeah.
So she has me like pinned down and she gets done and she said something to this effect. Now forgive me.
She
This may
shaved
not-
both arms.
Yeah, forgive, this may not be totally 100%. She said something after, but this may not be the exact phrasing. Something to the effect of, oh, he'll like that now. Something to that effect, saying the person I kind of had the crush
And
on.
who was in the room? Like there?
Or
Or not like
he
right
wasn't in
a
the, like he
distance.
was in a distance. Like there was a lot of people like
Oh,
surrounding
that's
me.
so
So I get up, I go in the bathroom and I lose it. I'm just crying because you're just, I know it sounds just like a stupid, funny
No,
story. It
no.
is kind of funny, but like when you're a teenager and you're a girl and
That's
secure,
humiliating.
we already have, you know, you're a girl, you have hair everywhere. It's like you have to take care of this shit that costs a lot of money.
which
And
we didn't have.
yeah. So it was stuff like that.
That's
Was
humiliating.
humiliation in front of everybody.
Mhm.
And any time that it was even stuff like other stuff like that, they would have I would specifically remember a light meeting that was held and two girls specifically, I'll tell you after, but were kept being brought up that they need to lose weight. They did not need, everybody was in good, I look back now, I'm
Yeah.
like, we were in good
Great
shape.
shape.
If I could go back then.
Like, who are you to tell anyone anything? You're not the parent. You're not even like,
Mhm.
who are you? Like, you think about it now, and it's like, who?
Slave labor, child labor.
Exactly. I mean-
you need to look this way so that we can present this thing. You guys are getting paid per diem just for food, right?
It's
On
just for
StraightWay?
just to eat,
Right.
and we would
so-
save what we could out of that. But
No,
I
we
don't
got,
think that
we got a paycheck. That
Oh,
was not the per diem. That was like,
gotcha.
it wasn't more than $100 like every 2 weeks, something
Right.
to the effect. We got about 20 to 25 bucks of per diem per day that we were there.
that was all from the grant.
But that was from
we
the
had
grant we
got
got, which that's a
from-
whole
from
nother
the governor.
thing that we can talk about,
Yeah.
a whole nother episode. We could talk about all the
Yeah.
grants stuff given to them. Anyways, so point being, these light meetings and hot seats we would
Right.
were like, I do remember some of the light meetings when we were on the road
Yeah.
were like, they would happen, be just like one of the leaders would be like, God's just really putting on my heart that we need to have a light meeting that everybody, we'll just,
Or sometimes they would say rap session.
we're just gonna go around and everybody's gonna confess something.
Yeah.
We're just gonna go around and say what we're struggling with.
Because you all know you need, there is something you can confess, and we're all just thinking like, oh my,
Yeah.
then we're worried. I remember
Yeah.
being worried, thinking,
Did
oh my
did you
God, what am I
realize
gonna say?
That in those meetings, that one person would get singled out and they would.
Oh, yeah. It
So
would
it was
usually
like-
be,
Sometimes, yeah.
So what the point was, and I think this was intentional, is we need to have a light meeting. Everybody needs to come confess, but they're waiting for that one person to get to them. And when it's, all right, everybody,
Now
get on this
just
person.
ream
ream
into
that
them.
person. Right,
Mhm.
exactly, because they are the one that needs to break this meeting. And it's not the people that are participating because they're innocent, not necessarily innocent bystanders, but the people that, oh, I may have done something I need to confess for. It's getting those on board that makes it feel more authentic, because the leadership is manipulating behind the scenes. They're picking
Mhm.
somebody. That person needs to break today. Well, let's call a light meeting. What do you have to confess, Siri? What do you confess? What do you have to confess, Troy? Raw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And then they pick somebody to just hammer.
And then there would be times where they would,
Mm.
they knew Like everyone knew somebody was in trouble. They did
Right.
something wrong. And we needed to have a meeting to all just address it with that person. I remember one time, I don't want to say a name, but he grew up with us. You recently talked to him. We're almost going to interview him, but we had a meeting at our old trailer and we were all in a circle, a bunch of us, and this kid was in the middle, and we all had to go around and say, like, tell him why he was wrong and what he was doing was wrong and he's in sin and this and that. I just have this vivid memory of that. And then somebody slapping him in the face and humiliating him. Like literally went up to him. He knew it was coming, walked up to him and he was like, Michael, or excuse me. He was like, he said his name, put his hand there. You need to break, and then just slapped him across the face like that.
Was that an adult that did that, or one
Yes.
of? Was it an elder?
I'll tell you later.
Or-
I'll tell you later.
gosh.
Y'all don't remember
I
that?
do
Troy,
not
you were
remember-
there
I
because
don't-
you quoted a scripture from Revelation. I remember that.
Troy and
I know.
Revelation.
There was a
He
lot of crazy
did.
things that happened at your old trailer.
I know. No, and we all had to do that. Like we were all forced to tell that why he was in sin and tell him he was wrong and this
don't
quote
remember.
scripture
I
and this
think
and
I
that.
remember it. I don't. Yeah, I think. I
Anyway,
remember it.
just that kind of that happened all the time. Where sometimes it was, everyone knew this one person was in trouble. And we all had to attack them.
Yes.
And then other times it was like, oh, everybody confess. That way we get to the
Mhm.
right person and
Right.
they confess.
That's the
Yep.
thing I wanted to get into about light meetings. StraightWay is not the only place that use those. This actually predates StraightWay by about 10 to 15 years. In Sea-Doo, it was a cult rehab type thing that started in California where they from. So is there some connection there? I don't really know. But what they called it was smushing sessions and hot seats.
That
Smushing.
sounds
That is
like
a
making
weird
out.
word.
No,
Like
That is
Hey,
a weird word.
it is a weird word because it's what. Okay,
Are they
let's go through-
smushing down the person's identity?
no. All right.
Okay.
The reason why they call it smushing is because what they do is they spend however much time it takes the entire group on the person in the hot seat being the person that everybody's focused on, berating them until they psychologically break. Everyone surrounds them, puts their hands on them, and then starts speaking words of affirmation and love.
We never got to that point.
Yeah,
None of
we
us got
did.
that.
Yes.
We would get
Words
If
of
you broke-
affirmation.
no.
If
If you
broke-
broke, we prayed for
Oh no,
you.
I
and
remember
we,
praying.
like,
So
Yeah, we
Yeah.
prayed. We didn't
And-
say give words of affirmation.
affirmation being, look, we love you, and
Yeah.
we're the family that can accept you, even though you have all these problems. That's words of affirmation, as in we're affirming who you are right now after
Okay.
you broke.
Okay.
Okay, so in Sea-Doo, that would also be accompanied by sexual acts. That's why it was called smushing.
Wait,
And yes, it's so twisted. That's why they got shut down. Yeah. David Kirschke and the center, they would do the exact same thing, but they would stop before the sexual side of things. But they would surround you and hug you and give you words of affirmation like, look, you just had victory, right? So if you convince that person that the feeling of euphoria that went from
Hmm.
I'm being attacked to I break psychologically, I break, but I'm being told I just had victory, and everyone around me who is
It's
just
confirming that, yeah.
aligned against me is now hugging me.
Right.
I'm going to feel that release of euphoria that I finally made it through. All right. So next time you're not the one in the hot seat, someone else is in the hot seat, and you're going, I know the feeling of euphoria I had if they just would break.
Okay. What does smushing stand for?
Smushing. It's the sexual act afterwards. They would call it smushing because it was the whole process to get to that point.
What
of
is the
euphoria.
sexual act? Like everybody involved there have a big
Like-
orgy, or what does that mean?
Usually it was with the leaders having
Mm.
boys and girls and men and women like resting in their laps. It's just this really weird,
What
twisted
is
stuff.
That is
that?
Okay,
so
but it's
strange.
Sea-Doo. Like if,
yeah,
if you
that's
want,
that's a whole different
yeah,
thing.
it's a whole different
Right,
thing.
yeah,
If
that's
you
weird.
want to hear more about it, the
I'm good.
Colts Vault went over and had 3 or 4 episodes on Sea-Doo, and they talk about it. And when she talked about it, the host of that show, I was like, that is what our light meetings were. That's what hot seat was.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just
the
we
hot
didn't
seat.
have the sexual side of it
Yeah,
in
yeah.
that meeting. So anyways, what happens to a person that goes through the hot seat part of it and is convinced that they had a breakthrough? the leadership who set this whole thing up anyways, they're not actually there. It's a way to control people because you just broke them down psychologically. The literature's out there that this is how you break someone psychologically.
Right.
So you're creating in them a Pavlov's response. You know what Pavlov is, right?
Mhm.
The Pavlov's dog, every time that he rung the doorbell, he would feed them. And then-
Classical training of,
right,
yeah.
classical training. This is what happens. You go in here, you break, and then you feel this feeling of euphoria. And
That's
we have
classical training.
exactly.
Yeah.
So everybody who goes through that are now given that. They're training that, oh, I get somewhat of the feeling of the person who's breaking. I also feel the euphoria in the moment because I can be as cruel and as ruthless as I possibly can be to the person in the hot seat. And then as soon as it's over, I get pressure relief from all the abuse that I have. Now we're all one happy big family. And so now you're getting not only Pavlov's response, but you're also getting, what's the, you fall in love with your captor?
Yeah.
It's the syndrome,
What's it called?
Yeah, it's right at the tip of my tongue there.
Edit in later.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, so that's also built in there because now everybody's feeling this feeling of euphoria, and the person who brought it together is the leadership.
Yeah.
So now you're in love with your leadership, and you feel unified with the person you were just attacking, or unified with the person that was just attacking
Stockholm
you.
syndrome.
Stockholm syndrome.
Exactly. So you're using Pavlov and artificially creating Stockholm syndrome in the people going through light meetings. So you have to keep doing light meetings, and you need to keep doing to get the Pavlov response.
Right.
And it's like when you
And
take
it's
a step
everyone,
back,
everyone.
yes. And the people that are the most authentic in those meetings are the ones that were not the leadership setting it up, but the middlemen. Right.
Yeah, it was usually not a lot of leadership that
Right.
were.
They just
It
started
was
in the
like
hot seat.
one or two elders possibly. If it was a really bad sin or something.
Yeah, there would be a whole lot more. But if it was just one leader that said this person needs to be corrected, they would get your peers, like you
Right.
said, all the peers around you, and say, okay, practically attack,
Mhm.
right? And so you're overwhelmed. These are the people that I share my secrets with and my friendship with, and they're attacking me. I must be really wrong. And then once you finally get to the point of breaking, all your friends surround you, the leadership surrounds you, and you are given that feeling of euphoria because I'm not being attacked anymore. I must have accomplished something. And it's creating that. That's why you get leadership that when they finally break out of it, they're like, yeah, I did that. I don't know why I did that. It's because they were just reacting to programming. So
Of course, they themselves have been classically trained. It's
exactly.
this whole cycle.
It's the whole thing that they've
Right.
been programmed. And so when they look back, they're like, I don't know why I would do such a thing. It's because they were programmed.
Mhm.
That's intentional.
Right.
Whatever David Kursky was doing, however they were setting it up, that was intentional to create programming in people, and people don't realize
that
they were programmed.
So that he could ultimately have control of the narrative, of his narrative of everything.
He wants control, period.
Yes.
I mean, he's just, he wants control of absolutely everything and everyone, and he had it there, has it there.
Has it. Yeah. Yep.
God.
But you see that program.
You know, like until we recently really started talking about like light meetings 115, I never thought like we were really traumatized too much for any of those. It was like, we're just getting stuff out in the light, in the open, you know? But now I look back and I'm just like, holy crap, your brain is so wired to like,
see things in a certain way,
and
view situations in a certain way.
And you are constantly, what that does to your self-conscience is so belittling, and so you are worthless. You are just so worthless. It's like, I can never do right. I can never do right. I can never be good enough as this person. Yeah, like I said, there's just so many different avenues and episodes you can do just on certain topics.
Just room
like,
115. Do an episode just on 115.
You could like
people's experiences.
Everybody's their 115 experience. It's like, you know, almost everyone has a story of either if you weren't pulled into 115, you were pulled into some kind of counseling.
Do you have a 115?
Do
you have a 115 experience?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few like where I was pulled into an office right by 115.
That's a 115 experience.
Yeah.
I've kind of told this story before, but it was over the dumbest thing ever. I was in love with this guy for like a year or something. We had been out one night, me and a girlfriend that lived there as well. I'm trying to remember who it all was. It may just have been us and him. We were out in Houston, kind of like this is when the freedom of the spirit is kicking in and drinks and everything. So we had maybe had a couple of drinks and everything. Anyways, we're like leaving, and he like is my first kiss I ever had. He kisses me like before we leave.
How old were you, can I ask?
23, 22.
Oh my gosh, 23. First kiss.
Well, I left at 20. Well, hold on.
I was 21.
I left.
Yeah, I was older.
I left around 23. So maybe it was like 22. Either way, I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
And then we're driving back. She ends up staying the night in her stupid trailer.
Your friend?
Yeah. I'll tell you after who.
Okay.
who
So
this
you and your
was.
friend went out and then met your crush.
Yeah.
And y'all kissed, and then you and your girlfriend went home.
She stayed the night at our trailer. And then the next morning, it was the very next morning, she had to have told on me like that night, because the next morning it had to be 8 or 9, and it was in the morning. I get called into counseling.
Who told on you?
Like,
You don't have to tell me. Just mouth it to me. Just give me a hint.
what sucks is
Sign language. Sign
what
language.
sucks is I actually do like this person. I said, because she's no longer there, and I actually do like her. But then, bitch,
she was still operating under all that.
Yes.
Craziness.
And so I get called into a counseling session. I have about. Were you not in that counseling
I do
session?
not remember,
Because there was like 3 or 4 other girls along with a leader. Two leaders.
Don't remember being in that.
That were in this counseling session, and they were getting on to me for your kissing and whatever, I'm in so much sin, and that was the first time that I knew this shit is weird, and I'm gonna fake cry my way out of here.
Nice.
So I faked cried. I was like, God, forgive me.
Oh my God. How many people did that?
Fake cry?
Oh yeah,
I'm
so
sure
just to get out of the.
I mean, I didn't even know that was a
Hot
thing
seat.
until I did it.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm sure there are people that
Yeah.
knew that was, especially if they were part of the leadership, like, oh, I'll participate too. Let's just bring up some fake tears.
Yeah.
Let's move
Yeah.
on to the person that.
Yeah.
so I mean, that's probably definitely a lot on the lighter note of things, because it definitely can get way worse. But I mean, that was just one of many towards the end of me being there. But it's just stupid stuff like that. Like, why? Who cares if you kiss somebody at 20, whatever?
Right.
Like,
But that's it. They wanted control of everything. Your personal life,
Yes.
your family life, your education, your political views, everything.
they told us how to vote.
Oh
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
That's one of the things in here.
Yeah.
And this, like, okay, so I found this article by this guy, Dr. Stephen Hassan, who's an expert in cults. He's let's see.
I specifically remember an elder calling me and telling me, you need to go down there and you need to vote for this person.
Yeah,
Yep.
they would want control of absolutely every area and aspect of your life. But one thing this Dr. Hassan mentions in here, he's an expert on cults and the psychology behind that is, okay. So one of the things he mentions is influence and control. Okay, so cult influence is designed to disrupt a person's authentic identity and replace it with a new identity. There are many types of cults. It lists, political, religious, self-help, all these different types. And he mentions influence and control. Influence is everywhere. Parenting, relationships, education, politics. They want to say in absolutely everything.
Yes.
You're from parenting to politics to everything. Business, religion, everything. But influence can be enormously positive and helpful, as well as detrimental. One of the things he talks about in terms of actual cult leaders is that control and how manipulative they get in order to keep and maintain that control. Cult psychology. Cult leaders want people who will be obedient to them and their rules. They look for ways to break people. They want people who will work hard, long hours for little or no pay.
We did exactly that.
Yes, they want willing slaves. Authoritarian religious cults often use members for labor trafficking.
Yep.
Oh my
I
gosh.
feel like we were maybe labor trafficked.
What were they called? when he had to go on when all the guys would go on a work crew,
Yeah.
like a work crew.
And they made us go and we didn't get paid. And we
Of
weren't
course.
allowed
None
to
of
drink.
them got
We were
paid.
barely allowed to drink water.
Of course. When the mind is controlled, a victim may appear happy
Yes.
and willing to suffer for the profit or benefit of the leader/group.
Right.
So true.
What's the responsible light meeting? You become the person that starts doing that.
Yes, identity change.
Yes.
That's another one.
Yep.
Undue influence does not erase the person's old identity, but rather creates a new identity to suppress the old one,
Yes.
which is what we were constantly taught.
Yes.
Suppress who you are, die to that,
Yes.
because I want you to have this identity, which is basically a robot that just obeys every little thing I say.
It's not expanding and helping the image of God in you grow, or the unique expression that you are to grow. That's too uncontrollable. What I want is everyone to
yeah.
be a cookie cut of
Robot.
and robots that all do what I say in the way that I say it immediately when I say it. And here's the consequences.
Yes.
You wanna suffer those, right?
Okay, after different types of manipulation, the creation of a new identity is done step by step by formal indoctrination sessions and informally by members, video games, publications, media, and it goes on.
What's that video that David Kirschke
Yeah,
made you
that's-
watch?
He would make
Whenever-
everyone
Oh.
watch. If you,
Whenever people got in serious trouble, this is
Serious.
what was the
after,
name of that? They would
this
call
was-
it the.
this was usually after
I never had to
one,
watch it.
this was usually after 115 and
Oh,
they still
yes.
were not breaking. You had to watch the repentance tape.
That's what it
It
was.
was.
The repentance
You
tape.
guys, this was
Oh my!
like
God.
a
hours of David just
3 or 4 hour
rambling
session of him preaching from this. I don't know.
from it's the video's like 1978.
Oh
Yeah.
god.
Okay, maybe not that old, but it looks that old and it looks
It's
awful.
pretty close. It was in the
Horror.
He's
Eighties.
just rambling
Early
on like
80s.
nobody's engaged in what he's talking about. Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
They're all just trying to get out of there.
oh,
And
so-
then the new identity is reinforced and the old identity is suppressed.
so that goes in with their required reading list. They had this
Yes.
one book by Watchman Nee. Now I like some of the stuff that Watchman Nee wrote. But
Just
he
say
wrote-
real quick what you're referring to when they were in the program.
If you were in the program,
Yeah.
and even so if you were in the program, there was a list of books, and I don't remember if it was 15 or 30 books, but you were required to read it in the 12 to 18 months that you were going through the program. One of those books was what by Watchman Nee called Spiritual Authority, and that
yeah.
book, I have reread and read that a few different times after leaving the cult and recently leaving the cult mindset. That's something that's a lot more difficult to start breaking from. That book is so damaging because it does an excellent job from scripture, twisting scripture and texting from scripture, proving that it doesn't matter what you do for your leadership. If you're doing something that's evil or wrong for your leadership, the consequences are on your leaders, not you. You just have to obey.
Right.
So that if I could compress the whole book is absolute submission to
Mhm.
authority. And everything that your leader does, if it is something that displeases God, God will take it out on that.
They'll take
leader.
care of
Wow.
it later. God will take that's
Yeah,
exactly what we were always told.
Wow.
It doesn't matter. You
Hmm.
don't need to know the details. You just need to obey
Yeah.
whatever the leader's saying. You just obey. And period. If there's something wrong, or if you have a check about it or don't feel good about it, God will take care of it later.
Right. It degrades
Mm.
that you have the same Holy Spirit that the rest, if we're talking in Christian terms, you have the same Holy Spirit that the leader does. It degrades that. It makes you think that you have a junior Holy Spirit and they see
Hmm.
something more and beyond you.
Right.
And it's so damaging to your own understanding of the image of God in yourself that you become less human.
You
But-
lose your identity.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
lose who you are. And why were we created just to have our identities stripped and to become a robot? Then why the hell are we here?
Yeah.
Why are we different people? There's no point.
Right. And
That's wrong.
it is totally wrong. It doesn't fit reality. And keep going because
What, no, this is it. The last thing I was going to mention was he talks about the lasting effects of being in a cult and
Mm.
what it does to you, even after you leave. While you're there, certainly, but even after you leave and you don't even realize some of the things he lists. Prolonged and intense coercive persuasion can cause identity disturbance. Commonly, here lasting effects panic and anxiety attacks,
Yep.
extreme identity confusion,
Mhm.
depression, psychosomatic symptoms like headaches, body aches, anger, guilt, shame, fear, distrust. I mean, all these things. And certainly there's so many other things that could contribute to
Mhm.
that. But I know I feel so many of these things
Yep.
listed here on and off all
You
the
have a
time.
necessary, it feels like the thing that always gets me is that I have a feeling that I need to control everything around me
Yeah.
so that I'm not controlled. And what's interesting, that's also programming,
Right.
because what was I in? I was a cell in a top-down tyranny.
Hmm.
And I'm saying, I don't ever want to be a cell in that top-down tyranny, but I'm okay with being the tyrannical leader. And I'm just like, oh, I really have to be able to step back in those moments and go, I don't need to be in charge. I'm supposed to be partnering
Mhm.
with people. And it takes a lot. I had
Yeah.
a interaction with my previous boss, 5-10 years ago. And I was like, you don't realize how difficult it is for me to be a nice person. And she was like, what? And I was like, you make it so difficult to be a nice person. And it is like,
You said this to this person?
well, I mean, she was of all the people that I worked with, she was given a really, really bad hand. But the reason that she was given that position was to be a puppet of the guy that was
Right.
was above her. And we all knew that. Just like, I was always working.
She was your supervisor?
She was my supervisor, and I was always working towards her benefit.
Right.
But because she was being a puppet, I was triggered from this. And I was like, you don't realize how difficult it is for me to be nice to you when you're being the puppet of him. And so, and it's one of those things that was just like, I didn't realize until recently how much of the ongoing effects of that programming feed into the way that I live my life. As a father, can I let my kids just be kids, or do I need to control?
That is huge.
Right. As a husband, can I make room for my wife to be a different person and personality than me, or do I need to control it? Because I don't want to feel controlled. And it's like,
well, do you take
totally
steps?
agree.
Well, do you take steps? I mean, obviously you do. I know the
Yeah.
kind of person you are. You take steps back and go, you recognize what's going on and go, okay, hold on a second.
yeah.
I maybe need to change a little of my viewing here and kind of rearrange what's going on. That is the difference though between people like us, where we can take a step back and go, hold on a second.
This is not right.
This isn't feeling right. I probably need to change some things. And versus somebody like DK, who was so narcissistic that he would never admit to any fault.
Right. I think for me, the thing that's been the most helpful, one is interacting with, like, never be the smartest person in the room. If you're constantly surrounded by people that you're the smartest person, it feeds your ego. I don't need my ego fed. I want to be surrounded by people that are better than me. This is including this group. Okay. The other side of it is actually getting counseling. Is that was probably the biggest thing was, what does it look like to think for yourself? I actually needed someone else to say, are you saying that? Or is your programming saying that?
Yeah.
Right. And starting to call those things out. Rachel, my wife, what started me on the path of getting out of that cult mindset was like, why are you asking the owner's permission to sell your car?
That's right, Rachel.
Right.
Ask those questions.
It was so weird. Why are you asking them to sell the land that you have? Like,
that's what we have to do.
That's what we have to do. There's wisdom in a multitude of counseling.
I remember that Dad having to ask what kind of car he had to what kind of car he had to could get.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we'll end pretty soon. I know this could go on and on and on.
It's only 115 stories.
Oh, but I mean, I do have one question that we could just kind of all go around and just kind of real quick, just give an answer to it. But what would you say to your younger self being there at this place as an adult now and where you are now? What would you try and tell your younger self?
Like younger, like a child or like a teenager, or just at any point?
I guess at any point, whatever thing, I mean, for all of us, it may be a little bit different. Maybe could be at a time where you were really hurt or really, you know, you're trying to leave or something. It just the dynamic of,
Yeah.
I don't know, Troy, do you want to go?
Depending on the context, that becomes really, really difficult. If I'm
Yeah.
talking to someone that's underage, there are people that I know that were so psychologically and physically abused there. Like, do I tell them to stay with their parents? Like one of the friends that you were gonna interview, right? Do I tell that person to stay in that situation because it's better to be with family than to be alone or being raised by whatever raised people that left that way? I don't know. I think that if I was to talk to my younger self there, it would be identity. Made in the image of God, that because of what Christ accomplished in his life, death, resurrection, is that we are all recoverable images of God. And I think that we weren't given that. We were stripped of the image of God. We were stripped through the programming to be tools and extensions of David Kurski and the leadership at that place. And so reiterating identity being directly of the relationship between you and God would be very, very important for a teenager in that situation. To my 18 to 20 something self, it would be, do you not see all the red flags and it is time to walk away? I think that another part of that question would be, for us, what would we, if knowing what we know now, what would we say to our parents in that place?
Yeah,
That's a good question.
And
I also like
is that back then or right now? In current state now or
Both.
back then?
Also, I like the question you asked in your last episode, Melody. I would like the opportunity to, not right here, right now, but I'm just saying, if I had the opportunity, like you asked her, if you had 2 minutes to uninterrupted and he had his freaking mouth sewn shut or taped shut and couldn't speak or interrupt, what would you say? That was just a thought popped in my head. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, that's no.
So what would you tell your younger self?
What would you tell your younger self?
What would? Oh wait,
me? I don't know. Me? I think, I think I'd have to sort of categorize or compartmentalize maybe my younger self. I would say something like, it's okay. It's okay. It's gonna be okay. Stick it out while you can, and don't lose your identity. From a young self, it's okay. Don't lose your identity. Maybe as a teenager going into young adulthood, I would say, do what you can to get out. Like see things for what they are. Really, truly see things for what they are, and do what you can to get out and let who you are, your identity, truly shine. I don't know, that's hard.
Yeah.
It's a really difficult question.
Yeah,
It's a good
it's
one,
like
but
it's
it's
like because
hard.
like how would you? It definitely can be. I know I've been thinking about this question for the past week or two, and like, what would I try to say to me? I was so unbelievably self-conscious there. I barely spoke because I was so shy. I did have a stutter at a young age, so that coming out made me already scared to talk. But anytime you spoke up, it was like belittling. So I think something I would tell my just either younger self, teenage to a young adulthood, is, don't be scared to speak up. You can do more than you think you can. And sorry, I was writing this stuff down. I think like the main thing is you can definitely do more than you think you can, because I remember trying to get out and thinking, I will never get past this.
Right.
like, this is so big, me leaving, and I'm never gonna, this is so tragic. I've lost all my friendships. What am my life is over.
You're alone.
Yeah.
I'm alone and
Yeah.
my
You're
life is
more than
over.
what they say you are.
Yes. So you literally can do more than you think you can. Yourself is so run down at this point that you don't think you're capable of being out there, being in the world, having a real job, like accomplishing
Right.
things
I
in
think
life.
that the thought of those things is terrifying. I
Mhm.
remember being terrified at the thought of like having to go get an outside job outside of
Yeah.
traveling on StraightWay and what we were doing. I was so scared
Yeah.
because that's all I knew. And that my identity was in that. I
Mhm.
didn't even know how to.
Yeah, and it was a mask. Your
Right.
identity was the mask that you put on when we were outside the center. It's like we were raised in the village and Night Shyamalan.
Yeah.
Right? It's like
There's a whole
Yeah.
nother, there's a Walmart out there we can
Oh my
work at.
gosh.
Jesus, we can
It
make
wa-
money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My eyes definitely opened once I started got an outside job and I
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
oh my God.
That's why
what
they
am I
probably-
doing?
That's probably why they didn't want us to get an outside job or
Oh,
go to
yeah,
college or
that was a
high
huge
school, is
deal.
because
because you actually get paid.
well, that you get
That,
paid.
yeah.
You get paid that you can actually see the real world
Yeah.
and what's going on.
Yeah. See that they're full of shit.
So
Yeah.
full of shit. But thank y'all. I know that I could not have survived being out of there without friendships like this and other
Mhm.
friendships that have been there.
Yeah.
Yes, I was alone whenever I left, but then like there was a group of us that kind of all left around the same time. And we do have like these friendships that nobody else knows what we went
Yeah.
through and experienced.
Yeah.
And so
My wife kind of goes, "Oh, yeah, you're going to talk about that. I'll be over there."
My
'Cause I-
hus- like our spouses or significant others, definitely, I mean, they've heard about it for years. Like my
Yes.
husband's heard about it and he's just like,
What do you do with that?
Yeah. I mean, he's
I-
heard it all. He's experienced, or not experienced it, but definitely heard about it from different perspectives, from just
Mhm.
from friends and family being there. And it interests him, but he's also like, what the hell
Right.
did your parents allow to happen?
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I think
It was-
a lot of people on the outside don't realize how many compromises. Like, it's not like somebody went from where they're at and decided to be a part of a cult. It's like,
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a
That's what he
small.
talks about it.
yeah,
It's-
right, just a
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
bunch of compromises to the point where you're there. And then when you get out, you're like, good gracious, how far did I give up my
Good
identity to be a
God.
part of this?
Yeah.
And then, everybody else is going, why would you ever give up your identity that far? I didn't realize I was giving up my
Mm.
You
identity.
don't know.
My
what's
parents didn't
happening.
realize they were giving up their identity. What they thought they were giving up was the thing that was causing them to hurt the loved ones around them,
Mhm.
not
It's-
giving up their sovereignty to make decisions in their own life.
Their
It's-
own identity, their own true person.
Right.
Mhm.
And then you wonder why everyone who leaves that place goes through backsliding and gets back on drugs.
They don't prepare
They don't-
people to survive outside of that place.
Right.
They make people codependent on each other in a
Yeah.
weird, twisted,
You're
dysfunctional
now
dynamic.
addicted to David Kirshner.
Oh,
Well, to that,
that is the weirdest term I've ever heard.
yeah.
Right.
Well, to that point, we will kind of close out and let's cheers.
Thank God we're out of there. Cheers to being out of that
Cheers
cult.
to being out of a
Cheers.
culty cult.
That's awesome.
I like your tagline. Let's end with it. You end with it. God is good, but people can be culty.
Oh, God is so good, but us assholes can be culty.
That's right.
Thank you so much for joining us. As I have said before, I'm a big, huge component for therapy, getting your shit out there, talking about it, even if it's with like this, friends and family, in whatever capacity it can be. I know that it's starting to help us. It may be hard to talk about at times, but just do it. And thank you so much for listening in if you have, and stay tuned. Adios.
Bye. Okay, that's weird.
Stay tuned for deleted outtakes. Angle of my
All right.
oh my
Take 3.
take 22. I fucking hate y'all now.
We know, we can tell.
I'm not
Definitely feel it.
I'm not pissed. It just gets like just a little irritating, that's all.
This is why it takes so
not-
long to make movies. And live TV
yeah.
is really difficult.
Mm.
We're on live TV.
We can do it. We can do it.
Do you feel like your angle's right?
Do I look bad when I'm looking at you guys?
No.
Like I said, I'm not very photogenic.
Oh, Troy, don't say that.
That's why I grow a beard. Cover up all the unphotogenic
Oh, Lordy.
for the first couple minutes. So welcome back. This is part 2 of attempt 2.
All right, I guess we'll go ahead and start.